Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy Sam. I am the Health Education Project Specialist at the Maxwell and Eleanor Blum Patient Family Learning Center at Mass General. Before I get started, I just want to go over a few items with you all. Please note that today's session is being recorded for educational purposes. If you're interested in viewing the recording, you may visit the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. Please note that you are in listen-only mode. Everyone has been muted so they can hear our guest speaker today. If you have any questions for our guest speaker, you may use the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We'll have time for them in the end. Only Blum Center staff and our guest speaker will see your questions. Please do not share any personal medical information or questions in the chat. If you have a personal medical question, please ask your doctor. Lastly, at the end of today's session, you'll be directed to a brief survey, which we would like to ask you to help us complete. Your feedback is important to us as we plan future programs. So next, I would like to introduce you all to our guest speaker. Joining us today, we have Dan Coleman. Dan is a senior investigator with Mass General Police and Security, where he has assisted, guided, and supported many people that have been victims of identity thefts, scams, or frauds. Dan's prior background in law enforcement has allowed him to develop vast experience in professional networks that have been proven beneficial to the Mass General community on many levels. He joins us today to give a talk on how to protect yourself from identity thieves and scammers. So please join me in welcoming Dan.
Good morning. Thank you, Amy. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. And thanks everyone for joining us today in a very important topic, as we're all aware that everyone is susceptible to be a victim of fraud or identity theft. So a few of the things that I'm hoping to achieve today, you can see there, is just promote some awareness and really encourage some prevention steps to reduce vulnerability, and enhance all of our knowledge and confidence about some of the scams that are ongoing, how we can respond to those. And I'll offer you also some resources to help enhance all of that knowledge, but also to recover or address any victimization that you might experience. So the reality, as we all know, is we're leaving digital footprints throughout our daily activities. Use of cell phones, digital devices of all sorts. We're constantly contributing data into the world of collection. Some of it is legitimately collected for business purposes, as we'll see, which makes it a target for malicious actors. So one note that I have here is Google yourself. And I think you need to be prepared if you decide to run a Google on yourself. You may be shocked at how much information is actually out there. I would say that you look through all of the results, and there is one results page that's referred to as Nuber.com, and you'll see that that's pretty shocking. We've done this pretty commonly. These are all publicly available sites. And you'll see that it might have your exact address, your exact email address, and in some cases might even have your date of birth. And what this is compiling information from all different sources that we may have contributed to knowingly, or may have been the result of some older prior data breach that's out there publicly. These types of sites just go out and acquire information from all different sources. A really important thing to consider is this opt-out option that's usually available on most results pages. If you scroll down to it and you'll look and you'll see opt-out, it will guide you into certain steps. So as I say here, why should you opt out? And you can certainly read the reasons. These are things that sometimes we put out there because we want to be found, whether it's been Facebook or LinkedIn or some of these other social media sites. You want to be found by your friends and family, or maybe some old acquaintances. What happens is that stuff, if you're not careful, can generate a lot of other unwanted responses or unwanted exposure. So identity theft, just by quick definition, someone's obtaining or stealing your personal information. It's often done through scams or frauds and information compromises, which could be data breaches or data exposures. People, bad actors could use this information to open credit accounts, receive certain benefits. It could be welfare, unemployment, could be health insurance. They're engaging in this fraud or other criminal acts without us even knowing it most times. And oftentimes, the only time we find out about it is when we get a notice in the mail that's totally unexpected, or someone's using our information, filing taxes in our name, or getting benefits in our name that we weren't aware of. So the identity theft clearly impacts all of us. So spoofing, I have some definitions in red, some terms in red here, but spoofing is basically when someone is able to mask or hide their true phone number or logo behind something that looks real and trusted, and they're trying to lure us into something. It's almost like that Trojan horse mentality where you tend to think this is real, so you trust it and you just click without thinking about it. The scam is typically through calls and texts, the offers or making demands or threats or trying to scare you. And the phishing is really done through a lot of malicious malware, ransomware, things like that, that they get you through these fraudulent emails and they have you click on these malicious links. You're believing that you're clicking on a real link, but you're clicking on a malicious link, and it's going to either take over your computer or expose anything that you've got on your device, whether it's your cell phone that you're using or a tablet or a computer desktop. If they install those malware or ransomwares, they could potentially be intruding in your whole computer. So this is just a quick recent information. You'll see that 2021 from the FBI recently, Boston FBI put this out, $347 million lost just in tech scams. That's only one kind of a scam where people opposing, bad actors opposing as legitimate tech companies, and they're luring people into doing exactly what I just said. You have a problem with your software, click this link so that we can help you. And the next thing you know, there's someone's overtaking your computer and may even have your passwords or get your, be able to mirror your keystrokes. Now, why are these tech scams going up? It's suggested that because of all the work that we're doing remotely, all the work that we're doing on different platforms, digital platforms, these Zoom calls, the Microsoft Teams, other platforms like this, where we're working in a different society now, largely because of the pandemic that led us down to a road that was even more reliance on a lot of digital needs. And people are confused about some of the technology. You saw just what I had to do sharing screens, and sometimes people just fall for these things because they're panicking a little bit. So some of the signs of identity theft that I would like to point out is receiving bills. We tend to look at things in their junk mail, or you're not really paying attention. If you're getting bills for accounts that you don't have, or things, credit cards that you did not apply for, there's charges on your credit card statement. This really relies on us doing due diligence for our own mail and emails and communications that you might get from official businesses. Keep an eye on your bank accounts and unexplained withdrawals or transfers. Notification that someone filed a tax return. This was a big one that was happening the past few years, particularly after the unemployment fraud that was occurring nationwide, where people later on said, I was told I couldn't file my taxes because someone already used it. If that's the case, you need to talk to a tax expert, because they can notify the IRS and go through some of these things with you. Denial of credit. You apply for a credit card or a loan and you're not getting it because there's a lot of bad activity out there that you're not even aware of. And I'll talk a little bit about some of our responses and resources available to help get ahead of those things rather than waiting until they've happened to us. So our personal information, this is why this is happening, because it's such a valuable commodity. This is where we can take steps to protect ourselves. Data breaches might be beyond our personal control because we trust big companies that are holding and storing large quantities of data, and we have to rely on them. But these other things, scams and frauds and phishing, these are all things that we could be more diligent about and resist falling for them or reacting too quickly to them, whether it's a scam call or a fraud text or making offers that are too good to be true. So this is where I'm hoping to have some impact today to put this on the front of everyone's mind, to be more cautious and think a little bit ahead and not just react to these things. One of the things I like to think about is the data world is like a clothes dryer, and all these clothes are tumbling around and collecting off of one another. And if we're falling for scams and we're falling for frauds on these texts and phone calls, we're now contributing our own personal information into that tumbling pile of data, whereas it's in there anyway, legitimately through credit card applications or maybe store applications. But if we're unwittingly contributing our personal data into that clothes dryer of tumbling data, that's problematic. So a lot of the things that people, the malicious actors are looking for is social security numbers, even just the last four, because as we all know, those are the things that are tied to our finances, they're tied to our taxes, they're tied to a lot of our accounts. And if they have the last four, it helps them at least try to pretend to be you if they're trying to have something reopened or something changed. Any government issued identification that has personal details or photographs on it, they're looking for credit card numbers, bank numbers, anything with account identifiers on it. The message here is your social media accounts and your profiles. Check your security settings on these things. Check your, two-factor authentication. When you're getting rid of trash, do your best to shred it, throw it, tear it up as small as you can. It sounds, I hate to make it sound like paranoia, but it's just good practice. I think we know information is a commodity, and we know what they're looking for. So the secret for us is to try to protect all of that information through whatever means we can. If you're suspicious about an unsolicited request, don't fall for it. If it's unsolicited, you didn't call them, they called you, and they're telling you about all kinds of problems. Assume that it's at least that there's some kind of suspicious activity going on here, and do your own due diligence. And I'll show you some of the resources and things that might be helpful to do that. So these are some of the very current and repetitive themes that we see in scams, where you get a text or a phone call that says there's a family member that's been arrested, is sick, is injured in another country. They need money right away, and they're demanding that you pay by PayPal or gift cards or things like that. Those are scams that you should not fall for. If you're truly worried about a grandchild or a relative that might be hurt or injured or in trouble, hang up and call them directly before you start overreacting or being in a panic because of this unsolicited phone call. Another one we see is a court official or the IRS, and you owe money and you either have to pay or you're going to get arrested. That's not the way the system works. No one's ever going to demand money from you over a telephone call to prevent being arrested or deported or fined or shut down. No one's ever going to demand that money over the phone. And you'll find that if you challenge it, they may get a little aggressive, which should be another indicator to you that this is an act of fraud, and just simply hang up on that call or delete that text. So with COVID-19, we saw a lot of specific things where they said because of the pandemic, we've had problems with your accounts or your benefits, and they were hiding behind this COVID-19 fear and really causing people to react and overreact to clicking on these scams. Posing as your bank, we need to verify. When they say we need to verify, that's part of that phishing, where they're going in and they want you to provide them with information they didn't already have. And you're unwittingly doing it because you think you're trying to resolve a problem. So how to spot these scams? You've got unexpected or unsolicited contact. Again, if you weren't the one initiating the contact, that I had a problem with my cable or I had a problem with my internet service, and they're calling you, telling you you have a problem, you should look at that with a suspicious eye, definitely. Read the content of any communication. Is it truly professional communication or wording that they're using? Oftentimes, that's an indicator you'll see that there's some obvious things that when you slow down, don't panic, read these communications and look into it. Whatever you do, please do not click on the links or call the numbers they provide or discuss or provide any of your own personal information. Make your own independent inquiry. Hang up and say, okay, give me a number to call you back. Hang up, call your own account, independently. Look at your bill, look at your bank card on the back of it. Talk to them independently. Don't use what they gave you. If you think it's suspicious, you're probably right. So this is a recent headline from October, and these are what's referred to as imposter scams, where they're posing as one of your providers. And this happens, and you'll see some examples of this as we go through. This happens on not just TV or internet. It could happen with any other accounts that we have or service providers. It could be the Amazon or these different things that we've seen. So just today, and there's an important thing that I'll show you afterwards, but just today, the United States Postal Service put out some alerts that local news stations were carrying about getting a fake email. So it's not a text or a phone call, it's a fake email to your account. And it says that there's a package delivery interruption or disruption, and they want you to click on a link to update your information for reschedule of the delivery. That link has been proven to load some malware, which is what you don't want on your computer. It's basically their effort to try to take over and steal some identifying information from your computer. Just by you clicking on that link, it's installed and it will attach to your own computer. But we'll see a little bit more about that shortly. So this is the federaltradecommission.gov. It's ftc.gov. And that's an important site to remember, ftc.gov. Anything that has .gov after it is going to be a trusted site. So that's that ftc.gov. So you get a phone call, it's a recorded message or a text, and it's out of the blue. This is the important part, is it's unsolicited. And they tell you to pay using gift cards. And as I put in red there, once you do this, they're going to collect that information, other personal information over the phone, or if you provide them with information off a gift card, that money is gone and you'll likely never see it again. So big things here, it's unsolicited, totally out of the blue. No legitimate company is going to ask for payment by gift cards or make a demand on you. That's basically like an extortion. If you get a call like this is what the Federal Trade Commission recommends doing. As I've said, never give out personal information about your account or yourself or addresses. Hang up because it's a scam. Don't trust caller ID. And this goes back to the spoofing comment I made earlier. Spoofing is essentially my way of making this seem like I'm not I could be Mass General to you, but behind this, I could be a malicious bad actor where you're not necessarily seeing who I truly am. You think you're dealing with Mass General, but you're not. So don't trust caller IDs because it's a very, very common masking strategy that they use. Never pay for anything with gift cards. Another recent headline from Boston FBI, a 50% jump in losses from tech support scams. So that means not only were they attempts, but there's a 50% jump where people lost money, a lot of money, a lot of information, because once they fall for these tech scams, they lose what's essentially on their computers. Remember where we live, and we're living in a time right now where people are working remotely on their computers. They're getting these emails, they're getting these tech scams. We rely on our technology. And we're a region with lots of financial, banking, medical, and higher education businesses. And they know that this is a technology-based portion of the country, and we rely on it. So they really target us for those reasons. Again, Boston FBI, they're posing as customer or tech support reps. Once the scammer convinces people that their financial accounts have been compromised, they gain control. So this is the FBI. Note the red that I put on this slide. This is the Boston FBI telling us this recently in October. So it's not just me from Mass General with my own law enforcement experience. This is the Boston FBI very recently telling us about vulnerabilities. They're asking people to install this free remote desktop software. Again, posing as a tech support company, and they're trying to get you to load their malware onto your computer. And you'll see in blue, legitimate customer and tech support reps will never initiate unsolicited contact. And again, this is the FBI suggesting this to us and advising us of this. So you've heard me say it, and it's the FBI saying it as well. Federal Trade Commission has said it. Do your best to not panic. Resist that pressure to act quickly. Do not give unknown, unverified people remote access to any of your devices. Don't download or visit the sites they're trying to get you to go to. And don't trust the caller ID readings. There's the term spoofing that I just talked about again. They're spoofing. That's basically masking and making you see them as legitimate. And never trust any company, tech or otherwise, requesting your personal or financial information just to solve a problem. My recommendation would be here, unfortunately, assume things are a scam or a fraud until you can actually verify through your independent due diligence. It's an unfortunate way that we have to live our lives, but it's such a prevalent manner of crime right now that we really need to protect ourselves. And we'll see more of this, so up-to-date virus scans. Some of this might require you have some professional assistance at it, but the key changes here: contact your financial institutions immediately. Don't use the links or numbers they provide you. Look at the back of your bank card or your bank statements. Get real numbers to call your companies that you deal with. It's always a good practice to change passwords, especially when you suspect there could be something fraudulent happening. And so the FBI, just like the Federal Trade Commission, the FBI has an internet crimes site. It's ic3.gov, and you'll see more on this shortly. And it'll prompt you through, if you need to go to this IC3 to report something, you can go right through and it prompts you for all the information they're looking for. And we'll look at that site in a few minutes. So here's some examples of the way these scams and frauds are happening. There's an email on it. You get an email on your own personal account that says we've hacked your password and your contacts, and they provide enough information to suggest that they know you. They engage in extortion, and these things were happening, saying we have videos of you, we have the sites that you've been visiting that are inappropriate and they're pornographic. You either pay us through cryptocurrency or some other means, or we're going to send all this information out to all of your contacts. That should be a clear indicator that this is a fraud. It's scary to get. A lot of us have had them. It's scary to get, but when you truly know that's not a legitimate concern that you may have, and this is a very, very common tactic that we're hearing about. So you just should not respond to these emails and delete them. Don't open any links. Don't click on any links that might have been there, and delete them. And you can, again, even before you delete them, if you want to verify these things, you can go to the ftc.gov, ic3.gov, and the U.S. Postal Service has a site that I'll show you shortly as well, and learn more about the specific concerns that you have that will help validate to you or give you more confidence that you're experiencing a fraud. And don't overreact and don't panic on it. It's hard to do, but it's important that we not panic. So here's an imposter scam that came through on one of my colleagues' phones not long ago. It's just a text that comes in, and as you can see, it's urgent, and it says US Gov, which makes us think, okay, and it was during COVID-19 pandemic issues. So this is done specifically for a reason. And what you want to look at is the flags here, right? It says tap here, and it's gov.com at the end of the blue link that's right here, instead of .gov. So they're trying to fool you and trying to get you to panic. If you click on that link, you're potentially going down a bad alley that you don't want to be in. So you don't want to click on these things. And again, they're playing on COVID-19 and relief funds. That was the whole way this was an imposter scam posing as a government entity. There's another one that was used by a major grocery store. It was an unauthorized Facebook page. Basically, it was a fraudulent page posing as the grocery market, and it was sending out Facebook messages to just random people about a free giveaway. And it asked for lots of sensitive, click on this link. This was so prevalent at the time that the grocery market had to put out their own public awareness statements, because it was an imposter using their name and their logo on the Facebook. It looked very, very realistic, but it wasn't. And it wasn't them that did it. It was a malicious actor that was doing it for the sole purpose of trying to have people click on links so they could intrude on their computers and steal identifiers. There's another one with Netflix. This is another example. It's a little bit blurry perhaps on the right side of this slide, but the message, as I mentioned earlier, read the language on it. Hi, dear. That's probably not ordinary business communication to open a communication that says, hi, dear. Your account is on hold, and the blue ribbon here is a little bit of a scary fact when, if you're a Netflix user, and that's one of the things, if you're not a Netflix user and you get this email, you can immediately assume this is a fraud. You don't have an account. How could they have it on hold, right? If you have questions about it, go on, do your own internet search for Netflix security. Look for those things. If you have Netflix accounts, look at your own billing statements, and use their own thing. On the left here, I have this, check out the ftc.gov, and you'll see that specifically these were all things that are very, very common. Waiting package scam is another new one. It's Amazon, FedEx, UPS, all of those are busier than ever, especially now with the holiday season coming upon us. Many people shopping online, not going necessarily out to the stores or doing the things that we used to do. So we rely on these delivery networks. And remember, I just mentioned the one about the Postal Service alert that was put out today by local news stations. So it's just another opportunity for these scammers. They know we're using these services every day and probably not paying close attention. When you get something that says you go on there and reschedule your delivery, or there's been a problem with it, click here to update. What you're doing is you're falling for it, and you're not updating anything, you're giving. And that's where we need to be more diligent and vigilant about what's happening to us. So this was an actual case as well. It ended with a very fortunate ending, but this was an unexpected, unsolicited call to a female, happened to be an elderly female, created fear and panic. It was just telling her there were issues with her account, that she needed to do some things, and she would, on the phone, she walked to her bank to resolve the issue while she was on a cell phone with them. When she was there, an alert bank worker started to realize what was happening when this woman wanted to withdraw $8,000 from her account. And it was only because there was an alert bank staff person. This could have been a disastrous ending for that woman. But this was a local news station about it. It was it could have been devastating, but it's unfortunate because people are falling for these things, and they're withdrawing money and they're sending it out of panic, not realizing what other things could be available to them, which is why I'm hoping our meeting today, we can begin to spread the word even further and enhance everyone's awareness and knowledge about the resources and how to keep learning more about these, because they are changing every day. So what if I am a victim? If it's an account that you have, a store account or a business account, you might want to call that company where the fraud happened to you, freeze or suspend or consider closing it. If it's an online, go on right away, change your passwords or any PINs that you might have. I mentioned here there's ftc.gov, the ic3.gov I've spoken about. Identitytheft.gov is accessible through the ftc.gov. And call one of the big three, which are the credit bureaus. But you should know that on ftc.gov, there are direct links to get to Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, and you can work with them to get fraud alerts put on or free credit reports and review your credit statements. So you don't need to necessarily go directly to them. If you went to ftc.gov, you can access those sites as part of their resources. So what can we do? And I know I'm driving this home emphatically with this ftc.gov, but frankly, it's a big part of what I do all the time. It's what I use. I sign up for their alerts. I get emails daily from them. I'll get text alerts from them about new scams or articles that are coming out to help increase awareness to the public. And it's where I get a lot of my information. So don't answer calls from unrecognized numbers. Let them go to a voicemail. I mean, if we tend to answer all these calls, if you don't recognize the number or it's not a call you expected, and it says United States government or IRS or the DEA or anything like that, let it go to voicemail. Listen to what the message is. If they don't leave a message, chances are it's a scam. If they do leave a message and have a number they want you to call back, I would recommend that you not call that number back until you've done your own due diligence on it and find out what this is about. You can go online and look up, and it may even look like it's a real number or a real link. Again, that's spoofing. So you need to be very careful. It may come up IRS Boston, and that number, when you Google the number, may in fact say, yes, that's the IRS in Boston, but it's actually not, because you could call the IRS Boston yourself and say, I just got this call, and they'll probably tell you and confirm for you that this was some kind of a fraud call, and they'll confirm that they were not the ones calling you. My message here, I guess, would be to stay calm, do your due diligence, check it out. Don't react. Try not to react with emotion or fear, and do your best to slow down and go methodically through what these concerns might be. So on this site, and we'll see this, I'll exercise this live for you shortly. We'll go onto that site, look at it. And again, there are links there for Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. You can get free credit reports through this site. And there's a lot of information about response and recovery guides, putting plans together if you happen to have been a victim of a true identity theft. There's everything you would need to respond and recover from these things. And again, the note I always make, if you really suspect that you're a victim of fraud or identity theft, report it to your local police department. That would get it into the law enforcement circle quickest and on a most local level. And it also allows them to determine whether it's part of a bigger pattern or trend that they're seeing in your community or your city or town, or even within the region of the state. So these are things on a personal level, on a Facebook, LinkedIn, all these other accounts that you may or may not be associated with. Think about your security and privacy settings. Who can see them? And do you really know who can see them? From your profile alone, oftentimes, I could look at some of these sites and go through and figure out the town you live in, figure out where you work, maybe your title, maybe even some of your associations, whether they're business or personal. So you have to be really careful. You know, you're posting photographs and it has, you know, the name of your town, you have your kids on there, and the kids have their soccer uniforms on with the name of the town. And in the background is your front door of your house. Maybe it has your number on it. And again, it's not about being paranoid. It's just about limiting, to the extent that you can, limiting who sees that and what's their need to see it. Is it truly public, or do you want to set your privacy settings so it's only people that you allow in that you legitimately know? And it's a big challenge here. You know, there's a lot of information that's out there in the internet, and unfortunately, we ourselves are the biggest contributors to that information unwittingly through these social media sites or things that you're doing. Commentaries, and this is just from a professional responsibility side of this in red. If you list your employer on your profiles and then you go on to make some, you know, inappropriate or other kind of content on your sites, there are many examples of businesses being contacted about the inappropriate or inflammatory content posted by people on their personal sites. And more often than not, if your employer is listed there or you list your affiliation, you could be exposing yourself to some other issues within your work environment that you need to be careful of. There are lots of people who've had significant complaints made about their personal content because it has listed their professional affiliations, and there's a lot out there about their reputations as companies and what they expect of their employees. So computer settings, you might need to consult professional services and for your proper security settings, or maybe your internet providers, things like that. It's available. You can get it through professional means. I wouldn't just have your neighbor, I think, unless they have a professional background in this, but you can often do that through computer stores or some of the internet providers. Personal accounts, strong passwords. I know it can be a pain sometimes, but there's a reason for it, and it's probably more relevant than people realize, that passwords are often guessed, or they're often the same password used for multiple accounts. So if they get it in one account, they may be able to access into your other personal accounts. Change them often. Two-factor authentication, just in terms of quick and simple explanation of that, is when I log into my bank account online, it then says, we're going to send you a text to a number that I designated on my account. You should check that, make sure that that's truly your number that you had entered. And then you should get that second factor authentication where you'll get a security text on your phone that you need to enter in order to advance further into your login. That's what's referred to as multi-factor or two-factor authentication. If you have important data that you don't want to lose, consider external drives or cloud storage, so that if something does happen, your computer does get infected, you are able to recover. It's the same thing when we get new phones. Oftentimes you'll save things up to the cloud, and the new phones are able to access your cloud and pull it back. So if there's something wrong or you have any kind of malicious activity on your devices, at least your information is protected and you'll be able to recover that. Some quick terms to know about, very simplified, but there's a difference between a monitoring, an alert, a lock, and a freeze. And these are explained on some of the websites that I've mentioned, the ftc.gov especially. But it starts off very simple with monitoring. You can often done free. You can talk to a bank, or if you've been notified that you've been a victim of a data breach, oftentimes they'll do that. Active duty military personnel can usually get it as a free service. And many banks, if you call your bank and say, I want monitoring or I want alerts to be set up, they'll usually do that pretty free of charge as a customer. Credit locks are a little bit different. This is when you think you may have had an actual incident that you need to vet out and need to really investigate further. And this might have a fee with it. They can vary depending upon the institution. But this is basically you're given a PIN to personally lock and unlock the account whenever you need it. Whereas a freeze might be you notify your company and they put a freeze where essentially it says what it says. Nothing's going to happen there unless the institution works directly with you, and it usually requires a police report as well. But again, these are just some things that you might want to talk to your financial institutions about. You can explore further on the ftc.gov site as well. And I just think a lot of the times it's better to be proactive with monitoring and get fraud alerts so that you're not waiting until the horse is out of the barn, so to speak. You want to make sure that you're aware of things that are suspicious before they can really have an impact on you. So a data breach is essentially people who hold large volumes of data, and they're targeted because what malicious actors are looking to do, the easiest way, rather than doing this one person at a time trying to steal personal identifiers, if I can hack into these big sources of data, banks, healthcare, lots of places are often targeted because they can get large sources of information through that. Phishing is usually based on an email or a text or some social media post that we're going to fall for. Malware, again, is the infections that we talked about in the text scams. And ransomware is exactly as it suggests, that we just stole all your data, and if you want it back, you have to pay us in crypto or some other form, and we're going to do a denial of service. We see this in major institutions. You see this in major government locations as well. It's covered widely in the news, locally and nationally. And the dark web is just a place that you need to know about and know that it exists. I don't recommend anyone ever trying to go there or find it or look around on it. It's a very, very dangerous place with a lot of malicious actors, where they sell, trade, and acquire illegally obtained data and information. It's a very, very dangerous place, and I do not recommend anyone trying to find it or exploring it in any way. So again, these are some sites. I put them there, but you don't need to write them down because they are directly available through the ftc.gov, and we'll see a little of that. Your local police department is always a great resource for any kind of concerns that you may have. And these are a few other links here that I think I'm going to stop on these slides, and I'd like to go to a couple of these websites to show you the ones I've been talking about so that you can actually see them live. Okay. So we should see the Federal Trade Commission website there. Are we good, Amy? Very good. Okay. All right. So this is up in the left here. It's ftc.gov. And this is a site that I think you would find extremely valuable. I do. It's something I look at pretty regularly. And as I say, I register for some of the emails and alerts and things. So you'll see here in the middle of this, you can report fraud, get all these things. You get a free credit report by clicking on this link. It'll walk you through how to do that. And if you have suspicions about activity, I highly recommend that you look at that. If you have identity theft, you can just click that to help report that. And they'll walk you through an entire recovery plan with the resources you'll need, the forms that you need to fill out, and who to send them to. It's all right there. So at the bottom, again, you'll see lots of alerts and emails and articles and things that can come out. And I get these delivered to my email inbox. Again, at the bottom in the blue tab here, you'll see report fraud. Again, sign up for consumer alerts where they'll send them to your text or your email. If you want to go back and look in a legal library, if you're into some of the legal implications of this. The advice and guidance right here at the bottom of the screen. And this consumer advice, this is where I go pretty commonly. And there's news articles over here. There's military consumers. So if you're in the military, you've got family in the military, it's just another resource with specific intent for that. So this consumer advice I just clicked on, and we'll open that. So what to do if you were scammed, and you could click this learn more link, and it will walk you right through steps of recovery and some resources. Again, it repeats all your ability to report fraud, identity theft, get your credit report again. Lots of information here. And articles, how to report fraud. And this is the report fraud, ftc.gov. So there's a lot of really valuable points on this, free resources. If you have community groups, or you've got education groups or anything like that, I get these free resources. They literally deliver them to you in bulk for free. And we use them, we hand out at different events around the hospital to help raise awareness and enhance people's knowledge about it. But there's free resources. They'll come in multiple languages. It's a great resource for knowledge, for recovery, response. It's just got a lot of really good things. So that's ftc.gov. The next one I talked about was the IC3, which is an FBI sponsored site. And you'll see here, again, lots of articles, lots of information about, some of the scams. And if you're looking for some technical support on how to protect your devices or some of the, the software you're using, there's a lot of really good information on this. If you go across the top black banner right here, if you're looking to file a complaint or consumer alerts, there's industry alerts, ransomware. So if you have concerns or you want to increase your knowledge about some of these topics, you can look directly and click right on those links. I click on scams for us right now, and it leaves the IC3.gov site. And what it does is bring us over to an FBI.gov. So if you look up here in the line, the URL, it just took us out of IC3, which is a particular internet crime reporting sponsored by the FBI, and brings us right to the FBI. And once again, you can see all these resources and information that's available. Common scams, you want to look at what the common scams are. If your parents, caregivers, and teachers, about child abduction, there's a lot of different topics because this is the FBI. Computer safety. So if you're looking to find out how I can be more, more protected, or I can protect my kids if they're online, there's a lot of different information here for different groups. And it's really, really valuable. Project Safe Childhood. There's a lot of things there about protecting our kids, both online and physically. And safety sites for kids. There's a lot of interactive things where you can do them as family with kids together to help increase their awareness and protection. So common scams. You'll see this is again from the FBI. There's adoption frauds, business and investment fraud, charity disaster fraud. We see a lot of that after we see some of these major disasters, and whether they're hurricanes or weather-related things, or you'll see people, malicious actors and scammers will latch on to that as a cause and try to use that to engage in fraud. Election crimes and security, it's an appropriate topic for today, especially with the elections ongoing. These are things, healthcare fraud. These are all big targets for scammers. Holiday scams. If you've heard the term money mules, people can innocently follow thinking that I'm making money to be basically a banker for someone else that I've never met. It's an interesting thing. You could click right on this link and learn about money mules, because there's a lot of unwitting participants in that think that I'm really not doing anything wrong. I'm just basically running errands for someone else. So this is another one. So the United States Postal Service, Postal Inspectors Service, this relates to what they had put out today. Pretty interesting. The local news was carrying it, but this is a quick video, and the audio is up as high as I can get it. But if you do your best to turn your audio up, hopefully you'll be able to hear this. If not, it's USPIS. It's United States Postal Inspector Service .gov. Again, .gov is the key indicator of a government-sponsored site. So let me play this quick video for you.
An email from the post office. How do they even know my email address?
They don't. This is a bogus email sent by scammers that looks like it is coming from the Postal Service, or even the Postmaster General himself. The email contains fraudulent information about an attempted or intercepted package delivery, and provides a link to click on to find out when delivery is expected. But that click can activate a virus, which can steal personal information such as usernames, passwords, or financial account numbers stored on the computer or mobile devices. Here are some telltale signs that an email is bogus. It contains poor grammar or spelling errors. It states that immediate action must be taken or there'll be dire consequences. It requests personal information under the guise of reconfirming information. Postal Service does not notify customers about package delivery attempts by email. If you receive such a message, don't open it. Instead, forward it to spam@uscis.gov and then delete the email.
Okay, so again, I think if I can leave you with one thought here, it's about enhancing your awareness, protecting ourselves, and it's FTC Federal Trade Commission.gov, FTC.gov, IC3.gov, FBI.gov, or USPIS.gov. And if hopefully you'll take some time, look at those, and hopefully you found some value in this. And I appreciate your time and attendance here and help us spread the word.
Thank you so much, Dan. You have provided some helpful resources. We are now towards the end of the session. If you have any questions for Dan, feel free to enter them in the chat. We have a question on identity theft protection company. What are your thoughts on these types of services such as LifeLock to assist in avoiding identity theft? Do you recommend signing up for these types of services?
I do. Personally, I have, because I've been a victim of multiple data breaches and I've been made aware of it. And a couple of times it was provided free of charge to me and my family. And we continued it. When we got, say, 1 year free, and I just continued it. It's been helpful, particularly when you know that you've already been a victim of a data breach or you've already been included in other fraud. So looking at those services, I would just look at reputable ones, look at the ones that are most cost effective to you. I would also recommend that many businesses now offer that as a perk or a benefit as part of their businesses. They may even be discounted. So I think protection is always worth it, just trying to mitigate it.
Thank you. What are some ways we can find malicious software on our devices?
I think looking for when your devices start to act weird, for lack of a better term, things are not normal or ordinary, or it's your sites, your dropping sites, or things that are not typical of what you're used to seeing. You can look at them. I think always updating your software that's coming in through providers. When it says that you are ready for an update, make sure it's real, make sure it's valid, but keeping those updates there, and you'll see them on your cell providers or your internet providers. And if you have a question about it, contact those companies and verify that it's legitimate, or even consider, it's an insurance plan. The way I look at it, consider paying for someone to help you if you have to. Bring it to your local companies where you get your services provided and get some help.
Thank you. What are some tips on using public computers, for instance, computers at our local public libraries?
Yeah, those are always concerns, and public Wi-Fi as well is always a concern about logging into them. I was recently traveling and happened to be in airports and in DC, Washington, DC, and these public Wi-Fi sites are popping up all over the place. I guess just make sure it's a trusted site, and make sure that you're not, if you're on the computers at the public libraries, and ask about them. I mean, if you're unsure, you're not comfortable, ask the attendant about it. And if there's a doubt in your mind, maybe reconsider where you're going or what device you're using. And again, if it's a public government sponsored building or location, you can ask the questions, but I think there's a reasonable assumption that it will be probably better than just walking into a local business that doesn't necessarily have the responsibility that a government location might have.
Thank you. How often do you recommend we run credit report?
Certainly whenever you suspect a problem, I would run it as much as you can. I run mine at least once a year. I run it just to look at it and be aware of it. Sometimes you might want to look at it if you're going to be applying for loans, or you have other things coming up in your life, life events. You might want to look at it then. People getting married, people buying homes, people moving to a new city or a new location, you might want to run it to at least benchmark it to know where it is and what it looks like before you had that life event that changed for you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. What are your thoughts on shipping labels with our name and mailing address? Should we shred or discard them in any particular way to help secure our personal information?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. We should do your best to shred them, or they can end up just anywhere, and you don't know. You know, it's not like someone's going to stand outside your house typically and go through your trash looking for your address and your information, but you don't know that, and you don't know necessarily where it goes to a bigger depository. I just take, again, as peace of mind, and whether you use a Sharpie to block them out or you tear them up. If you don't have a shredder, I tend to tear things up as small as I can and just discard them. And again, I just, my information is very valuable to me, and I know I've already been a victim of it. So I do my best to take steps that will protect me in the future as well.
Thank you. One question just came in. Do you have time for one more question?
Certainly, sure.
So we have an individual who just received a postcard from a legal group notifying of a data breach through T-Mobile exposing their data. They never had an account with them. Are requesting if it's okay to involve them in the class action suit. Is this a new type of scam that you're aware of?
Not necessarily with T-Mobile, but there have been things like that before where it's a postcard in the delivered by U.S. mail. Is that right?
It seems like it.
Yeah, I think T-Mobile, it might have been even further back, or just double check that you didn't have a family member that also had T-Mobile at one point that might have been under their name. But I think generally speaking, there's no immediate need to be part of a class action suit like that. So you've got time to think that through, look at it. I would really encourage that person to go on ftc.gov and just enter in there T-Mobile, because it's the Federal Trade Commission. So if there is a class action suit that's legitimate, there's likely to be an article on the Federal Trade Commission site as well that will help you validate that it's legitimate.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Hope that helps you.
All right. So we're right about at 1 o'clock. Before we end today's session, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience, Dan?
Really, as I started off with the objectives, is increase awareness, enhance knowledge, provide some resources, and share as much as we can with friends, family, relatives, business associates, whatever you can do to spread the word to help people prevent these crimes from happening.
Thank you. And everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Hopefully you found today's session helpful. As I had mentioned, today's session is being recorded. So if you're interested in viewing the recording, you may visit the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Bye, thank you.